not going to believe this right now, but the woman who's destroying you today is going to come back someday, and you're not going to care. Here's how that happens. We're going live, baby.
Nope.
We'll do it live.
You're listening to the premier podcast for men who want to not only be better with women, but want to be better men in general. This is the Come On Man podcast. And here's your host,
Paul Bauer.
Paul Bauer.
Paul Bauer.
Paul Bauer.
Paul Bauer.
Paul Bauer.
Paul Bauer. He is a certified master life coach and NLP practitioner.
It's true. It's damn true. Damn, I got sunburned yesterday. Look at this. Anyway, I'm back, baby. We are live on a hump day. How the hell are you? If you are new to the channel, my name is Paul Bauer. I help men level up and get better with women. And the funny thing about doing that is it tends to make us better men in all areas of our lives. All right. So on Monday, I told you guys I've got an idea. I didn't have an idea for today's stream. And so I asked the audience, if you have an idea for Wednesday's stream, let me know. And I only heard from one guy. Brother Drake from Wolfpack hit me up, and he shared his own breakup story from a few years ago as a suggestion. And he said, why don't we do a topic about how you eventually get to a place where you don't care whether they come back or not. And I was like, okay. But it was hard to take what he wrote and turn that into an hour-long live stream. So what I decided to do was take what he wrote and turn it into a story. So we're going to have story time with Paul Bebe. It's not Drake's story. It's a made-up story, but it's got some of Drake's elements sprinkled in. So shout out to Drake from Dar Fitness for that. Appreciate that. But stay till the end of this one, because if you're going through it right now, if you're going through a breakup, if you're still in a lot of pain from a breakup, this story is going to speak to your soul. Okay. There once was a man who fell so hard for a woman that he forgot for a full year and a half, actually, that he had his own name. He was 23. She was 21. She had a laugh that sounded like it had somewhere better to be, and eyes that seemed to be deciding something about you the whole time she was looking at you. The first time they talked, he thought, this is what all the songs were about. He felt specific, chosen, like she had looked through 1,000 windows and knocked on his. He was wrong, but he wouldn't know that yet. For the first few months, everything was easy. They moved through those early days the way people do when chemistry is high and reality hasn't arrived yet. Eating late, sleeping close, banging constantly, texting all the time, building a private language out of inside jokes and abbreviations only they understood. He started organizing his schedule around hers without noticing. He started skipping workouts. He started caring more about what she thought of a restaurant than he started caring more about what she thought about a restaurant over what he actually, or whether he actually wanted to go there or not. By month 4, he was making decisions the way a man does when he's quietly handed the center of his universe to someone else. She knew. Women always know, even when they can't name it. What she felt wasn't contempt, not yet. It was something more subtle, a low, persistent unease. Like the way you feel in a building when you're not sure if the foundation is solid. You keep going about your day, but your body registers the doubt. She started testing him. This is what women do, not because they're evil, because they're hardwired to find out if the man in front of them will hold his shape under pressure. It's as biological as anything else. She pushed on the edges, canceled plans last minute, going silent for days, pulling affection back without explanation. And he, instead of holding his ground, reached toward her even harder every time. He texted first. He apologized for things that weren't his fault. He rearranged the facts of arguments until they pointed back at him as the problem, because making himself the problem gave him the illusion of control. If he was the problem, he could fix it. He couldn't fix it. By the end of their first year together, the dynamic had completed its slow reversal. She spoke to him the way people speak to something they've grown tired of, but haven't yet made a decision about. He spoke to her the way a man does when he's terrified of losing the only solid thing he thinks he has left. She left him in January that year, a Tuesday, via text. The message was 4 sentences long. He read it 17 times before he put the phone down. And then he picked it up and read it 4 more times, as if somewhere in the rereading there was a hidden passage that led somewhere better. There wasn't. He didn't get out of bed the next day. He skipped class. He lay in the dark with the curtains drawn and replayed every conversation they ever had, looking for the moment it had turned, looking for a specific thing he had said or failed to say that had made her look at him and decide he wasn't worth the trouble anymore. Around 11 p.m. that night, he picked up his phone and typed, "How do I breathe?" She replied, "In and out." 2 words. She didn't even capitalize the first one. He lay there in the dark with those 2 words and felt somewhere beneath the grief of the humiliation, a fact beginning to form. He wasn't ready to see it yet. It was still too cold, too flat, too brutal. But it was there, waiting for the patience of something that has no particular reason to hurry. The fact was this: she'd already moved on. She'd moved on in a way long before she sent that text. While he had been building his entire interior world around her, she had been doing the continuous arithmetic of a woman deciding. And once she decided, she was done. The 4 sentences were a formality. The in and out wasn't cruelty. It was indifference. And indifference, as he had eventually learned, is worse than cruelty, because it doesn't even assign you enough importance to feel anything about you. He was 23 years old, and he had just received his first real education. He just didn't know yet what subject it was in. By the way, guys, I do have new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Please like, subscribe, hit those notifications. Even if I'm at WrestleMania, I will have an episode. He spent the next 11 months doing what most men do. He chased. Not openly. He was too smart for that. Or at least he thought he was. He didn't turn up at her door or flood her phone with declarations. He was subtle about it, which made it worse. He happened to be at places she might be. He watched her social media the way a man in prison watches the calendar. He analyzed the timestamps between her posts for evidence of who she might be spending her time with. He reached out every few weeks with something carefully casual, a meme, a song, a reference to something only they would understand, and then spent 3 days parsing her response or her non-response for meaning. He read books about how to get her back. He watched videos. He found strategies online and applied them with the precision of a man who's confused effort for intelligence. He did the things that promised results and then felt more desperate when the results didn't come, or came in small, tantalizing measures. A reply here, a like there, that felt like progress were only her but were only her managing him at a distance. By the way, guys, if you are in this space and you're doing this and you're trying to get her back, it's a terrible idea. I'll show you how to do it, though. I have a free ebook. The link's in the description. You can grab that, but it'll explain how to get her back, but it'll also explain why that's the worst idea possible. Okay. He improved himself, but for the wrong reason. He started going to the gym again, but he was doing it so she would see a new version of him. He read more, but he was reading things he thought might make him sound interesting to her. Every action he took had her at the center of it. Even the actions that looked like independence from the outside, he wasn't rebuilding. He was auditioning. And underneath all of it, the obsession. He thought about her constantly, not in the warm, generative way a man thinks about something he loves, but in the tight, repetitive way a man thinks about a wound he can't stop touching. The memory of her had calcified into something that functioned less like a person and more like a measuring stick. Every woman he met was measured against her. Every interaction she had was filtered through the question of whether she would have approved. Or every interaction he had was filtered through the question of whether she would have approved. She'd become a standard he was still trying to meet, even though she was gone. This is rejection breeding obsession. It was as predictable as weather. When someone we've built our worth around leaves, the mind doesn't simply grieve and move on. It goes to work. It constructs a case. The case is, if I can just reverse this, if I can just get her back, then the rejection will be disproven and I will be restored. The man stops being a man trying to build something and becomes a man trying to win an argument with his own inadequacy. The obsession wasn't about her. It never really was. It was about the version of himself that existed when she chose him. That moment before the slow reversal, where he had felt specific and selected and real, he wanted that feeling back. He thought she was the only door back to it. He was wrong. But being wrong about something you're addicted to is a remarkable poor deterrent. What he didn't know, what most men in that state can't see, is that his obsession was a symptom, not the wound. The wound was older. It lived in the part of him that had spent years believing his value as a man required external confirmation. That belief wasn't her fault. She had simply revealed it the way cold weather reveals a crack in the foundation. The crack had been there before she arrived. Around month 7 of his invisible campaign to get her back, she got into a new relationship. He found out through the social media arithmetic he was still running, and the information hit him the way information hits a man who had been telling himself the door is still open. He sat with it most of the night. He felt fury, then grief, then something that had no clean name, a kind of shame about the fury and the grief, because some part of him was beginning to suspect he had wasted nearly a year on someone who had moved on in a fraction of that time. He was right. He had. But he wasn't done wasting it yet. He had about 4 more months of low-grade obsession left before the machinery finally wound down. The new relationship she was in had introduced a variable into his calculations that made the math increasingly incoherent. He couldn't maintain the fantasy with as much conviction when there was a specific visible man in the picture. The fantasy required a certain ambiguity. Once the ambiguity was gone, he was left with the raw facts. She was fine. She had moved on. And he was still in his apartment reading their old conversations like a man who's memorized a blueprint to a country that no longer exists. The moment he finally understood this, not intellectually, but in the gut where real understanding lives, that was the moment the obsession began to release its grip. He didn't forgive her. And he didn't curse her. He just very slowly turned towards himself. Now, for you guys who recently got over a breakup, when did you realize the obsession wasn't actually about her? It was about you. Be honest. Let me know either in the chat or down below if you're watching the replay. Right? And if you're still in this space, just say, haven't gotten there yet. It's okay. We're in a safe space. It's okay. The turning took time. That's the part nobody talks about. People talk about transformation like it's an event. Like there's a morning you wake up and you're different. There isn't. Turning toward yourself after a year and a half of facing the wrong direction is slow and uncomfortable. And it looks for a while exactly like nothing. You get up, you go to the gym, this time without an audience in mind. You eat, you sleep, you sit with the discomfort of not having a project because obsession, for all of its damage, had been a project. It had given him somewhere to put his energy. Without it, the energy had nowhere to go. And for a few weeks, it just rattled around inside him like something was loose. But then something changed. It wasn't dramatic. It was more like the way a room gets tighter or a room gets lighter when someone opens a window you didn't know was there. He started investing in his own life the way he used to invest in her, fully, attentively, with effort. He took his courses seriously. He pursued a certification he had been putting off. He started lifting heavy again, not for aesthetics, but for the specific pleasure of moving a thing that didn't want to be moved. He called his older brother, who he hadn't called in months. He started sleeping at consistent times. None of it was exciting, but that was the point. The unsexy work of building yourself back is mostly about attending to the everyday things without an audience. The gym is full of men working out for the wrong reasons, performing effort for an imaginary woman who broke up with them 6 months ago. The man who does it for himself without the performance is doing something fundamentally different. He's laying a foundation. The other man is just painting a set. He began to understand during this period what had actually gone wrong. It wasn't that he had loved her. Love isn't the problem. It was that he had replaced himself with her. He'd used her presence to answer questions about his own worth that he should have been answering himself. Through consistent and discipline and the accumulation of a life he could respect. When she left, she didn't just take herself. She took the entire scaffolding his self-image had been leaning against. That's why the collapse had been so total. Men who build their identity on someone else's approval will always be the one in and out, away from falling apart. The work, the real work, is building something that doesn't require her to remain standing. He began to understand something else too. Something about the mechanics of obsession that most men never get told. Because most men aren't handed a guide for this territory. The obsession he had carried over a year hadn't been a sign of how much he had loved her. It had been a sign of how little he had built his own name. Men who are deep in their purpose, who have a mission that demands their time and attention, don't have the bandwidth for month-long obsession over a woman who told them in and out. They're too busy. The obsession had been, in its own way, a symptom of availability. His mind had gone looking for a project and landed on her because there was nothing else substantial enough to absorb it. He needed something substantial. He found several things: a training program that required real commitment, a professional skill he had been putting off developing, a friendship he had been neglecting because being in a relationship had made him think he didn't need friendships anymore. He started building a life with actual architecture, load-bearing walls, not just decoration. There are men who've done this work alone. It's possible, but it's significantly harder than it needs to be. What he didn't have, and what would have saved him months of circling, was someone who had already been through it. A guide, not a generic self-help guide full of vague affirmations about loving yourself, but a specific, accurate, street-level playbook for the territory he was crossing. The kind that tells you exactly what rejection does to the male brain, why the obsession is biological before it's personal, what nice guy conditioning actually costs you in a relationship, and how to build a version of yourself that doesn't require her approval to stay standing. That playbook exists. Men who find it stop spending a year in the dark. He'd find it eventually, but he found it the slow way, by living through every mile of the territory before anyone handed him the guide. By month 8 of this period, he had lost 30 pounds, not because he was trying to impress anyone, because he was eating better, sleeping better, and training with actual consistency. His face changed. His posture changed. The way he carried himself changed. Not because he was faking confidence, but because he had stopped apologizing. People around him noticed before he did. A woman he had known peripherally for 2 years suddenly looked at him with different eyes at a gathering. He noticed a difference. He noticed the difference, but didn't pursue it. He was still in the middle of his own works, so he filed it away. He was becoming someone. He didn't know who yet, but for the first time since that January, the project he was building had his own name on it. And by the way, guys, hold on. There we go. By the way, guys, if you need a playbook on recovering from a breakup, I got a book for you, brother. You got dumped, divorced, or ghosted? Good. Because that pain you're feeling right now, if you use it right, it can make you unstoppable. But first, you need to forget her for good. Most men, they waste months, even years chasing closure that never comes. They keep scrolling her feed, stalking her socials, replaying every word she said. That's not just self-torture, it's weak. And you're not weak, not anymore. Forget what your buddies or your mom tell you. Screw being vulnerable. This isn't about making her see your worth. It's about never letting a breakup wreck you again. That's exactly why I wrote Forget That Bitch. This book isn't your average breakup advice. No sugarcoating, no false hope, just raw, honest truth. She's not coming back. You can't fix what's broken, and you're wasting your life every second you spend obsessing. So what do? You get pissed, then you get focused. You rebuild your confidence. You hit the gym, chase your purpose, build your empire. This is your wake-up call. Use the pain as fuel. Cut the cord cold. Because the minute you stop caring about her, your real comeback starts. Inside Forget That Bitch, you'll learn why obsessing over your ex is killing your masculinity. Why you need to quit being a nice guy and start being the man you were born to be. Real steps, real talk, no bullshit. Ready to stop living in her shadow? Grab Forget That Bitch on Amazon or listen to it on Audible today. Don't just get over her. Get over the man you used to be and never let this happen again. Goddamn right. Let's take a look at the chat here before we move on. Darfin is in the house. Happy hump day, gents. And thank you, brother, for inspiring today's episode. It's not his story. I just want to make sure you guys know it's not his story, but it was his idea for this story. Brother Urkin says, good day, folks. How does Paul come up with these made up stories? Imagination or AI? Or maybe a little bit of both. He's a professional storyteller. I prefer the term bullshitter. Yeah, actually, there we go. Darvin says, I think the moment was when I realized that guy had been there all along. I was so beta. Sheesh. Yeah. Dude, when you wake up to that fact, it's like, oh, fuck. Right. I was thinking about this the other day, because I often say, I think like one of the first books I read in the space was No More Mr. Nice Guy. But I honestly think the first book I read in the space was Atomic Attraction on accident, because y'all know I'm into that woo-woo, right? And I had heard of that book, Atomic Attraction, from a chick on a dating app. Like somehow it came up, like maybe it was like a prompt in her profile that she's a book reader and she wanted to know like what books I was reading or whatever. And I asked her like what book she was reading, and she happened to be reading Atomic Attraction, which is weird because it's a book for guys. And I thought when I heard that, I was like, oh, this must be a law of attraction book. Cool. I'm like into that. I'm into that woo-woo chick crack shit. So I got that book, and I think that was the slap in the face that led me to No More Mr. Nice Guy. But yeah, anyway. Let's see here. Oh shit. $5,000 super chat. Shame these, especially for this episode. That's right. We've got to
shame this horse.
Yes, we got to shame these whores. Thank you to Elena Spar's Fitness for that. All right, back to the story, guys. By the way, guys, if you get this book, get the accompanying workbook. You can go to workbook.getoveryourx.us. It'll help you get over this bitch faster. Just FYI. Okay. It was 5 years before she came back. 5 years is a long time when you're using it correctly. He'd lost a total of 150 pounds by then. Not quickly, not dramatically, but steadily. The way a man loses weight when he's genuinely changed rather than temporarily motivated. His body had reorganized itself around new habits. He trained 4 mornings a week before anything else demanded his time. He cooked most of his own food. He slept with the discipline of someone who understood that sleep wasn't rest, but construction. That the man he was becoming was being built largely in the hours between midnight and 6 a.m. in the dark without an audience. His career had moved, not soared, but moved. The incremental forward progress of a man who does the next thing without waiting for the conditions to be perfect. He dated, not desperately, not as a campaign against loneliness, but the way a man dates when he's rebuilt his own center, with curiosity and standards, both. Some of it had gone well, some of it hadn't. He had ended things he needed to end. He hadn't chased anyone who pulled away. He had slowly begun to understand what he actually wanted from a woman and what he was no longer willing to accept. He'd also, and this is the part that doesn't make it into most breakup stories, spent real time understanding what had gone wrong in the first place. Not blaming, understanding. The difference matters. Blame is about assigning fault. Understanding is about extracting information you can use. He had spent time reading, thinking, talking to men who had been through similar things, working out the mechanics of what had actually happened in that relationship. He'd come to understand the concept of frame and what it meant to lose it. He'd come to understand what his people-pleasing had communicated, moment by moment, to a woman who was trying to figure out if he was worth organizing her life around. He'd come to understand that his obsession after the breakup hadn't been love, hadn't even been about her, but had been his brain trying to solve the problem of his own inadequacy through the only solution it had been programmed to attempt. He understood now that the problem had never been her. He understood now that the problem had never been women. The problem had been a set of beliefs he carried about his own worth and what it required from the outside world to stay intact. Those beliefs had been installed by years of conditioning that taught him to seek approval, to mute his own needs in service of keeping the peace, to interpret a woman's happiness as a measure of his own performance. None of those beliefs had been conscious. None of them had felt like beliefs. They had felt like reality. He'd spent 5 years very carefully replacing them. That was the real story of the 5 years, not the weight loss, not the career, not the improved posture. Those were outputs. The actual story was interior. The slow, unglamorous process of a man rewriting the operating system that had failed him. Men who do this work know what it costs. It's not a weekend event. It's not a mindset you adjust. It's not a mindset adjustment you can achieve by reading 3 articles and watching 2 videos. It's a daily practice sustained over years. And there are long stretches in the middle of it where you can't clearly see whether anything has changed at all. You keep doing it anyway, because the alternative is to go back to the version of yourself who texted an ex at 11 p.m. to ask how to breathe. He had no interest in going back to that version. And then one evening, his phone lit up with a name he hadn't thought about in a long time. Her name. She was in town. She mentioned it like it was a general announcement, the way people do when they want to seem casual about a specific intention. He read the message once and set the phone down. He noticed that his heart rate hadn't changed. That was information. By the way, guys, if you get value in these episodes, be like Dar Fitness and send a super chat, would you? He hadn't gotten here alone. That's the part of this story that doesn't fit the mythology. The one where the solitary man suffers in silence and emerges transformed through sheer personal will. That story exists, but there's something real in it, but it leaves out a variable that made the difference for him. And that, if he's being precise about it, probably shortened his journey by about 2 years. The variable was other men. Somewhere around month 10 of his rebuilding, before the real acceleration, before the body had fully changed or the career had moved, he found himself in a conversation with a group of men who had been through variations of what he had been through. Not a therapy group, not a venting session, not a room where men sat in a circle and competed for who had the worst story about their ex. A room where men asked each other hard questions and then actually answered them. The questions were things like, what specifically did you do that killed her attraction? And what does that tell you about what you need to fix? What covert contracts were you running? And where did you learn to run them? What does it look like when you're operating from your purpose versus when you're operating from fear? How do you hold frame when a woman pushes back? And what does it feel like when you lose it? He'd never had conversations like that with men before. He'd had conversations about sports, about work, about mutual friends, about surface complaints. He'd had conversations where men performed certainty at each other without actually transferring anything useful. What he hadn't had were conversations where a man who'd already crossed the territory he was trying to cross looked at him directly and said, here's what actually is happening. Here's what it costs you. Here's what the other side looks like. Those conversations changed his trajectory. Because here's what no one tells men who are in the middle of it. The problem you think you have is almost never the problem you actually have. The man who thinks his problem is that he can't get over his ex usually has a problem that predates her by at least a decade. A deep structural dependence on external validation that she simply revealed. The man who thinks his problem is that he doesn't know how to meet women usually has a problem with how he sees his own worth. The man who thinks his problem is that his wife has gone cold usually has a problem with what he stopped doing 2 years into the marriage that made him easy to dismiss. You can't see your own blind spots. That's what makes them blind spots. What the other men gave him wasn't advice in the conventional sense. They didn't tell him what to do. They asked him questions that forced him to see what he had been unable to see alone. They pointed at the patterns, the same patterns they'd carried themselves, with the specific no-nonsense precision of men who had paid tuition on those patterns and could now identify them on sight. They also held him accountable in a way that was uncomfortable and necessary. When he started drifting back towards monitoring her social media, one of them said, "What are you doing?" Not as a reprimand, as a genuine question. What are you doing? And why are you doing it? And what does it cost you? He didn't have a good answer. The question was enough. When he started rationalizing skipping training, one of them said, "You skip the thing you don't actually believe you deserve. Do you believe you deserve it?" That one took him a week to sit with. This is what men do for each other when they're functioning correctly. When they're operating as something other than competitors or mutual entertainment, they hold up a mirror and refuse to soften the reflection. They say, "You're better than this. And I know it because I watched myself do the same thing and I know where it goes." He would have gotten to the other side eventually without them, probably, but it would have taken longer. And the loneliness of the journey, the specific loneliness of trying to rebuild yourself in isolation with no one checking whether the work you think you're doing is the work that actually needs doing, that loneliness was a tax he would have paid for several years more. The men in that room had paid it already on his behalf. There's a version of this story where he gets to the end of it the same way most men do, alone in the dark, working from instinct and hope and whatever half useful thing he stumbled across online at 2 a.m. Some men make it that way, many don't. And many of the ones who do make it, who come out on the other side purposefully and no longer hostage to one woman's evaluation of them, look back and say the same thing. "I wish I'd found the other room sooner." The cost of building yourself without a floor is that you fall further before anything catches you. He found the floor. He was glad he did. And by the way, if you're going through something alone, you don't have to. There's other men that can help you through it. Beer club? Not anymore.
You fix what's broken. You lead like a man again. No pity, no therapy. Just fire, just flame. Cold bed, broken home. Midlife drift, feeling alone. You don't need hacks, blogs, lies. You need men with fire in their eyes. We rebuild from the ground up. No excuses, no soft stuff. Telegram lit 24/7. Brothers locked in, steel, not heaven. Step inside the pack. We don't fall, we attack. Truth, fire, presence, we bring it back. Masculine pride, no time to slack. Step inside the pack. Drop your past, claim your track. No therapy talk, no playing small. We sharpen blades, we take it all.
Ooh, for the love of God, too sweet me, baby. By the way, we're having our Wolfpack hangout tomorrow night at 7 p.m. It would be the perfect time to join. Go to wolf.comeonmanpod.com. In fact, let me bring up the graphic here. Go to wolf.comeonmanpod.com to join. Do your 7-day free trial and show up at the hangout tomorrow night. If you like it, awesome. If you don't like it, yeah, cancel before you get charged. No harm, no foul. But most guys like it. Most guys like it. Rob, salutations. Permission to come aboard. Permission granted, sir. All right. Yes. Good to see you, Rob. Thank you for joining us today. He replied to her message 2 days later, not because he was playing a game. He had genuinely waited 2 days to reply because he had 2 days of actual things to do first. This is what a full life does. It creates genuine and non-strategic delay, which functions like strategic delay, but without the performance. They made plans to meet. He wasn't nervous. This was the first thing he registered when he walked into the place and saw her across the room. His body, which had once reacted to her proximity like a compass near a magnet, was calm. She looked well. She looked objectively good. She hadn't aged badly. She was still attractive. But here's the thing about the rose-colored glasses. You don't feel them coming off. You only notice afterward that the color of everything has changed. He noticed as they talked the things he had spent years not noticing. The way she angled her stories to make herself the protagonist of every narrative. The way she referenced people obliquely, just enough to make you curious, then withdrew the information as a form of currency. A passing cruelty in how she spoke about someone who'd clearly cared about her. The texture of her insecurity under the performance of ease. He hadn't been able to see any of this at 23. At 23, she'd been a symbol, not a person. Symbols don't have the messy specifics of personhood. The thinning hair, the recurring lip hairs she hadn't gotten to in a few days, the minor manipulations that are invisible when you're in love and obvious when you're not. He thought, I cried over this. He thought, I skipped class over this. He thought, I texted her at 11 p.m. and asked her how to breathe, and she gave me a 2-word answer with no capital letter. And I read it 17 times. He felt no anger. That was what surprised him most. There had been a version of the evening he had imagined, perhaps without admitting it, where there would be something satisfying about turning up changed, about letting her see what he had become and watch something register in her eyes. That version assumed he still cared about her opinion of him. He discovered, sitting across from her, that he didn't. Not even a little. The thing that replaces caring about an ex's opinion of you when the work has been done properly isn't contempt. It's not performance. It's not revenge. It's something more complete than all of that. A total absence of interest in her evaluation. And none of it would have landed anywhere significant. He was free. He stayed for about 2 hours. The conversation was fine. She laughed at the right moments, and he was polite and present. She'd made a reference softly to old times. He received it without momentum. They said goodbye. On the drive home, he thought about the 23-year-old who had lain in the dark and counted her messages' syllables for meaning. He felt a real tenderness for that man. Not pity, tenderness. The kind you feel for someone who was doing the only thing they knew how to do with the information that they had at the time. He hadn't known at 23 that rejection doesn't mean disqualification. He hadn't known that a woman leaving you isn't a verdict on your worth, but a transaction. She's moving resources to where she thinks the return is better, and that's her right. And it has nothing to do with whether you're a man worth investing in. He hadn't known that his obsession was a mechanical response to ego injury, not a measure of love. He hadn't known that the work of becoming a man who doesn't depend on external validation is the single most important work a man can do. He hadn't known that there'd be a night 5 years later where he'd sit across from the woman who sent him in and out and feel absolutely nothing but mild, detached interest of a man who studied the subject from the outside. He knew all of that now. He drove home and made himself dinner and went to bed at a reasonable hour and didn't lie awake thinking about her. His life, which had been waiting patiently for him to take up residence in it, continued without interruption. This is what it feels like when you've done the work. Not triumph, just normal. The extraordinary thing about a man who's actually healed is that her coming back doesn't even register. By the way, guys, follow me on social media. I'm on most of the good platforms. If you could go back and tell the 23-year-old something, the one in the dark, the one counting syllables, the one who was about to spend 11 months chasing a ghost, what would you tell him? The man thought about this. Not the practical things, not the strategies, though those matter. Not don't text her and not focus on the gym, though both are correct and both have their place. those are right answers to a surface question. The deeper thing, the thing that the 23-year-old actually needed to hear was something about the nature of suffering itself. You'd tell him, this isn't what you think it is. You'd tell him, you think this is about her. You think you're suffering because you lost someone who mattered, and now there's a U-shaped hole in the world, and you need her to come back and fill it. That's not what's happening. What's actually happening is that you built your sense of your own worth on something that could leave, and it left. And now you're standing in the rubble of an architectural decision you made years before you ever met her. She didn't cause this. She revealed it. You tell him the obsession isn't love. Love is spacious. What you're feeling is a closed loop circuit. Your mind looking for a way to restore its own functioning, using the only remedy it knows, which is her. Every time you check her social media, every time you draft a message and delete it, every time you replay a conversation looking for the moment you could have changed the outcome, that isn't love. That's a brain trying to solve a math problem that was never going to have a satisfying solution. You tell him the work you're about to do will cost you years, not because it has to take years, but because you're going to do a lot of it in the dark without a guide. And you're going to waste months moving in directions that feel like progress, but are actually circles. You're going to improve yourself for the wrong reason before you improve yourself for the right one. You're going to have 3 conversations that change you for every 100 that go nowhere. And you would tell him the other men matter. Find them early. Find the men who've been through it and come out with something other than bitterness. Find the men who ask better questions than the ones you've been asking yourself. Find the men who will look at you and say, I know where you're at right now. I was there, and here's what it cost me, and here's what it's going to cost you if you don't change the variable that actually needs changing. Bitterness is easy to find. Cynicism is everywhere. Men who've been through a breakup or a divorce and emerged with the conclusion that all women are a certain way, that the whole enterprise of caring about a woman is a trap, those men are available in abundance, and they'll never help you become the man you need to become. The men who can actually help you are the ones who've done the interior work, the ones who've rebuilt something real, the ones who still choose to engage with women and relationships from a position of knowledge and standards, not from the position of a man who got burned and decided the only safety was the cold. Those men are hard to find, but they exist. The man who had once texted, "How do I breathe?" and received "in and out," sat with all of this for a long time. He thought about what it had cost him to figure it out the long way. He thought about the men he had eventually found and what their questions had done for the trajectory he was thinking, or trajectory of his thinking. He thought about the 23-year-old in the dark and all the men currently in the dark who had no idea that the thing they thought was about a woman, was actually about them, about a guide they were missing, about a set of beliefs they had never examined, about a version of themselves they had never been given permission to build. He thought, someone should tell them, not in the vague motivational way that tells you to believe in yourself without telling you what to actually do, in the specific, useful older brother way, in the way that says, here's exactly what rejection does to you and why. Here's exactly what nice guy conditioning costs you and how to recognize it. Here's exactly how to move through a breakup without spending a year and a half auditioning someone else's decision about you. Here's what you're actually trying to build, and here's what it looks like when you've built it. That kind of telling. The 23-year-old in the dark deserved that. You deserve that. The man who's been sitting across from you in the story, the one who cried, who obsessed, who chased, who turned, who built, who sat from her again, who sat across from her again 5 years later with a calm heart. that man is trying to tell you something. He's telling you that the other side exists. He's telling you that the work is real and that it takes what it takes. He's telling you that the men you do it beside make more difference than you currently understand. He's telling you that the woman who's sent in and out is this very moment not thinking about you at all. And he's telling you that the day will come when that isn't a wound. It'll just be a fact. And you'll be too busy being the man you built to care about the fact. That day is available to you. It starts with turning towards yourself. You already know what direction that is. All right, guys, that's all I got for this story. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I didn't flub it up too bad. Y'all don't know how hard it is to read to a live audience. Guido says, we were together for 9 months, broke up 2 times. This last time she broke up with me a week ago. She insulted me and tried to emasculate my character with her words. She blocked and unblocked me. Well, bro, it sounds like you need to forget that bitch, right? Like, you know what's interesting about that is my brother, my 3% brother Luke brought this up to me because he went through, he broke up with his girlfriend last summer around the time that Forget That Bitch came out. And I said, hey man, let me send you a copy of this book. So I sent him a free copy of it. And when he got it, he goes, you know, you need to put a disclaimer in there because he goes, my ex wasn't a bitch. She just wasn't the right girl for me, you know? And I was like, yeah, that's not the point though. I can't say, you know, forget that good girl who just wasn't right for you. Like that doesn't work, right? You have to grab guys' attention somehow. So you have to have a book that's edgy enough that makes guys go, what the fuck? Right. But all the stuff in there isn't about her. It's about you. And Guido, if you're in that place, if it was just 2 weeks ago, get the book, brother, get it on Audible or something like that. Okay. It's going to fundamentally change things for you and you'll stop getting back with her. Okay. It always ends the same. It always ends the same. All right. Okay, guys, that's all I got for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Tune into the podcast on Friday. I finally finished Reality Transurfing, which is a 37-hour-long audiobook by a Russian guy who allegedly is a quantum physicist named Vladimir Zeland. And it offers a relatively different take on the idea of like manifestation, law of attraction. But for our purposes, it really had a lot of red pill concepts around mindset, handling guilt, being your own mental point of origin, etc. So I thought I'd do a Frame Friday on 20 concepts from that book that can help you with your mental frame. It should be a good one. I'm going to try to keep the woo-woo out of it. I know like last week's episode was pretty damn woo-woo, and this is a woo-woo book. But if you're listening to his book, like some of the stuff he talks about, it doesn't sound very woo-woo at all. It's a lot of it's, he's using a lot of metaphors and stuff. We'll talk about that on Friday. It was a good book. I'm not going to read that book more than this one time. He has a shorter version of the book that's only 5 hours long. I'm going to check that out and see if it's better. Because this book, like he went on and on and on about a bunch of stuff that I'm like, bro, I don't think you need to go into this much detail about this shit. And he uses a lot of flowery language. I was like, I don't know about this, but there was some really good information in it. I think you guys are going to like Friday's episode. Darfin says, this definitely wasn't my story. I know it wasn't your story, man. I know it wasn't your story, but we had to draw out your, like he sent like a small post in the Wolfpack. I had to draw that thing out to an hour-long story. So hope you guys enjoyed it. But that's all we got, guys. Do be sure to like, subscribe, hit those notifications. I do have new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we will see you next time.
This has been the Come On Man podcast. Now, go out and get it.